Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today at our Lunch and Learn about what Mary's Place is doing alongside our partners, like those who are here with us today to provide mobile services to families living unhoused in our community. We are excited to get started, but we're going to give it a few minutes for a few more folks to join us. So hang in there. It's good to see some new faces. It's good to see so many nonprofits out there joining in on this work and joining us today. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I will say, if you have questions and you have questions in advance or at any point along the way today, you can enter those in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. For some of you, maybe at the top if you're on your phone, and then we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. So hello, hello, hello. I'm Marty Hartman. I'm the Executive Director of Mary's Place. So thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us. We'll get started in a few minutes here. We've got some exciting information to share. There's so much going on in our world right now and in our community, and there's some good things happening with our outreach team. And so we want to share all the great stuff that's going on with our outreach and our partners. And it's a critical time. So thanks for tuning in. We're going to have a few more minutes of folks joining. Thank you all. For those of you who are joining right now, we're going to get started. We'll give it a few minutes. Excited to see you all. Got some golden friends out there. So thank you, thank you, thank you for wanting to come alongside, listen, hear updates. We love being in partnership with you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Right. Hope you're enjoying some sunshine. Maybe some of you are out, can see it through the window, or hopefully some of you are sitting outside in the sunshine. But it is good to see summer's finally here in the Pacific Northwest. Woohoo! Celebrate that, right? We've got a few more people waiting to join, so we're going to get started in about 1 more minute. So hang in there. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Trina's put a chat, a link in chat. So if you want to ask some questions ahead of time, things that you already know you want the information to, please put them in. Even if we cover them during the seminar, don't worry, we will address those. So I want to make sure and we'll answer those at the end. And you can put those in at your Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. So thanks again for being here. How do I mute myself? I think you're already muted. Katrina is joining us and she takes care of that, right, Katrina?
Yes, hello. Thank you all for joining. And yes, everyone should be muted, so you shouldn't have to worry about any sounds coming in. Thank you, thank you.
All right, well, we want to honor your time and we just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And hello and welcome. We are so grateful that you wanted to join this Lunch and Learn to really hear about what Mary's Place is doing alongside our partners, like those that are here with us today, really to provide more mobile services to families living unhoused in our community. And as you know, that number is growing. If you have questions along the way today, you want to send them in advance, please just enter those at the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. For some of you, that tab may be at the top if you're on your phone. And it's hard to hear, Marty. Okay. Is that better? Let me know. I see that coming in. I want to make sure that you can hear me. Katrina, how does that sound?
I think it sounds good. It's a little bit echoey, but I think if the AirPods are working there, it's working. It's coming through okay.
Okay, I can take those off. Let me know.
This actually is great.
Okay, I'll make sure I talk a little louder for you. And again, if the audio isn't quite clear, please let me know. I appreciate that. So thanks for the feedback. My name is Marty Hartman. I'm the director of Mary's Place. And I just want to say thanks again. And you can find the recordings of our past Lunch and Learn webinars on our website. And then here is a link to that. Katrina's going to add that in chat so that you can go back and listen to some of the ones that we've already covered about housing and all of the other great work that's going on. Right now, though, we want to update you. You all know the state and local eviction moratoriums have expired, and the rental assistance funds have been depleted across the state, and nearly 15,000 family households in King County may face eviction in the next 2 months. And this is during our busiest time of the year. It always has been. Most people think it's probably in the winter, but this is our busiest time when families want to come into shelter to connect their children with schools, and the shelters are already full and bursting at capacity. So many families are making the heartbreaking decision to leave their homes in order to avoid an eviction on their record. At today's Lunch and Learn, we'll talk about the critical services being provided by Mary's Place Mobile Outreach Team and our community partners who are awesome and amazing to serve unsheltered families in King County, especially as this shelter space becomes increasingly limited. We expect a surge in the number of families needing support in the coming months. And we know that our outreach program is very cost-effective, efficient, and life-saving. So before I introduce our awesome and amazing panel, and before we get started, I want to take a moment to begin our time together by acknowledging the land on which Mary's Place operates as the traditional home of the Coast Salish people, specifically the traditional home of the Duwamish, Snohomish, and Suquamish, who are, although not recognized by the federal government, still here today. We offer deep gratitude to elders and all other Coast Salish peoples, past and present, and future, who have made it possible for us to live, love, play, and work in this community. And we invite each of us to seek authentic relationship with Indigenous communities and to continue to learn about the past and present colonial impacts and to move beyond acknowledgement to action. Thank you for allowing us to take that time to honor this land and our Indigenous neighbors and community. You know, Mary's Place began more than 20 years ago, and it was an incredible time as a day center for women experiencing homelessness in downtown Seattle. Our drop-in women's day center is still the heartbeat of Mary's Place at 9th and Stewart, where we serve about 100 women every day, providing basic necessities along with meals and resources for housing and employment and wellness. But really, during the recession in 2008, we started seeing moms and children coming into our doors at a rapid rate, and we had no resources to offer. There was no shelter capacity at that time. There was no funding for families experiencing homelessness. And we ourselves had no expertise in running an overnight shelter, but we knew we had to do something. We could not turn these families away, and we could not be bystanders. So we opened our first overnight shelter for women and children in 2011 and have continued to develop our programming to address the growing needs in our community. And not long after that first shelter opened, we knew we needed to keep families together to address their housing needs together. And we opened a shelter that welcomed dads. And then we opened another shelter that welcomed extended families and then families with pets, because our four-legged friends are part of our family. And we had families who had lost everything, caring for a sick child. And that was the beginning of our Popsicle Place program. And you know, before COVID, we provided emergency shelter and meals together with resources and all the employment and wellness for over 800 moms and dads and kids each night. And Mary's Place also runs the King County Emergency Family Shelter Intake Line, where families call each night for shelter and hope for a bed. Before this pandemic, though, we were so close. We were this close to reaching our goal that no child sleeps outside. We were offering shelter and services to every family that called. But the pandemic forced us to close 4 smaller shelters that kept our guests and staff safe and inside. So we are excited, though, We have recently opened our newest shelter in Bellevue. Thank you, City of Bellevue, in a former hotel. And this life-saving building holds over 200 family members each night. But simply, it's still not enough. We are at capacity again. And so for those who can't come into shelter, it's our mobile outreach team working with families in cars and tents to connect them to resources and to use our rapid response funds to address barriers and really move them back into housing quickly, because that is the goal. You'll hear more about this program in a few minutes, but we invite you to look at those past webinars that cover topics like housing services, our youth services program, and the impacts of systemic racism on homelessness. And you'll get that link again in chat. So it'll be there for you if you need it. But today we're focusing on the work our mobile outreach team does to provide services and help unsheltered families find housing quickly. So let me introduce our awesome and amazing panel. I'm excited to introduce Sherry Tillman. Sherry is Mary's Place Intake Specialist Manager, and she oversees the King County Emergency Family Shelter Intake Line, and speaking with families and connecting them to resources, shelter, and services and support in our community. Thank you, Sherry, for being here. It's so good to see you. And then I want to introduce you to Ryan Dish-Cushman, who is Mary's Place Outreach and Diversion Director. Ryan is awesome and amazing and really oversees these critical programs that connect family to resources. He works to eliminate barriers with his team, and they utilize this flexible funding to quickly move families into safe and stable housing, many times avoiding shelter entirely. And we are really lucky and blessed to have Kim Intrahokalitz here as an outreach specialist at Mary's Place, who works directly in communities in King County to meet families where they are. She's working to address their really unique needs and support them to achieve the long-term stability that they're really looking for. Welcome, Kim, and thanks for joining us. And we also are blessed to have Kyle Serkina here, the Housing Stability Director at Vine Maple Place. Hi, Kyle. Kyle and his team at Vine Maple work with families that are near or experiencing homelessness and partners with them to help them end homelessness in South King County by providing housing, employment, budgeting, counseling, and child services. So that was a lot of talking on my part. You really want to hear from these panelists. So thank you all for being here today. And I'm just going to dive right in. I think it's important. I want to say, hey, Sherry, let's get started with you. You have been critically instrumental in building out a program that works really efficiently for families who call needing support. And you so often have the heartbreaking job of turning families away to shelter capacity. And I've been in there so many times, and you have had such grace when you're working with families, and you just can't offer anything tonight. So just thank you for your heartbreaking work that you have to do, but the love and support that you share and give out with you and your team. So can you share a bit about the intake program and its history and how your work intersects with the mobile outreach team?
Yes, I can. Can everybody hear me? Or can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Sounds good.
Okay. Yes. So thanks, Marty. Again, like she said, my name is Sherry Tillman. I am the site director, intake manager, and I've been with Mary's Place for 5 years. And I started out as a welcome desk / intake. So at the time, my job was to meet and greet different providers that came in, families that came in, and I also was the person that answered the phones for families in need of shelters. At that particular time, it was only just 2 sites that we were allowed to fill a shelter for, because of all the other sites and all the other provider agencies had to go through 211 for coordinated entries. And so over a period of time, the system, it just wasn't successful. Coordinated entry families would be on the waiting list for 180 days and until they got a contact back for shelter. And so that's when Mary's Place developed the intake diversion line with King County. And that's how we was able to become the host for all of the King County family shelters as a main resource and a main line. So right now, the way the process works is that we have one main line. We have partnerships with other agency providers as well. And so our job as the intake line is to provide shelter for families needing shelter. So instead of having a waiting list for like a month or a week out, it's a daily waiting list. So basically it has been very successful, and that started November 22nd, 2017. And so now when families call in, they can get served the same day. They don't have to be on the waiting list for a month or a week, but if there is availabilities, they're able to be served the same day. That also where outreach come into play is that now families, sometimes they have trauma, for whatever reasons that they're not able to be able to, fit in the shelter, because sometimes a lot of families, shelter is just not the option for them. So we talk to families and kind of see what the best solution was, what can we do to kind of help them. And so we do have, several families that is not an option, and that's when we would connect them to the outreach. And so I'll get into that a little bit later because I have a story with that situation. But just to show you about the King County intake line, last quarter, we took in 485 calls, and we had 70% of people that called in was indigenous people of color, as well as of Black as well. And this has kind of been consistent of percentages over time. We also had 48% of callers that called in for shelter were living in their car. 13% was living on the street, and also 34% was DV survivors that were fleeing at the time that they called in. And now, because we're getting our calls are getting, more families are calling in needing shelter. We don't have a lot of openings for the families that are calling in now. So we are directing them to outreach. And outreach is, able to help those families that, so they don't have to still just be on, waiting to call in every day, but they're able to get help as well while on their journey, still trying to find somewhere to go, or if there's another option that they can do. There is one story about a single mom. She has a 5-year-old. And she called in for shelter. She was sleeping in her car, but she had a job. She had fled. She's a DV survivor, so she had fled the night before. But she really had some great concerns about coming into shelter. She didn't feel like that would work for her. She didn't want to be around people because of what she was going through in her situation. And so we connected her to outreach. And then the result of that is that we're able to find out what happened to her. Outreach was able to get her into permanent housing. So now she's doing good. She has a job. And so now they have stability. So just like that situation, that's the outcome that we want to happen, with the families that do call in. Everybody on the team has, some type of experience, either if it's DV survival, if it's lived experience, mental health, everybody on the team have that. And that's why it's great that now we are combined with King County, because we have a personal relationship with the providers, that we can reach out to them and have that, personal conversation as well. With outreach, we're able to reach out to them as well and have that just personal conversation so we can be able to help the families that come into shelter. I believe that's it, actually.
Sherry, you and your team are awesome and amazing. Thank you for that great overview. We are so grateful that you are here day in and day out, 7 days a week, right? Providing this care, this love, this acceptance on the phone to folks. So thank you for you and all that your team do. So if y'all have questions for Sherry, make sure you put those in the Q&A tab right now. And we're gonna get to hear from Ryan next. Ryan, you've been with Mary's Place working on the front lines with families and helped create this mobile outreach program and the services your team provides today. Can you spend some time and really just tell us about the history of the outreach program, and then how this approach has been expanding to meet the need in our county. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Marty. Just like Marty and Sherry highlighted, there are not enough shelter beds for all the families that need it in this county. And just like what Mary's Place, I think, does best is they saw a need and a gap and wanted to fill that gap. And that's when this pilot program of a mobile team that could provide low barrier funding to families throughout the county was developed. And it started out with just 2 people, me and another staff member. And now it's expanded into a team of 17 because we've just realized how large the need is. And how our program works is, the best way to describe it is it's similar to a lot of emergency services. So we have an outreach portal on our website that community members submit into, social workers, teachers, nurses, doctors, families themselves submit to in the community when they recognize a family that needs help and that needs support. Sherry on our intake line also coordinates with us around those families that can't enter shelter, or families that have a housing solution but just don't have enough money to move in. And that's kind of the most essential part of this work, is that low barrier flexible funding. As costs have gone up, as inflation has gone up, so has rent and housing in this community. And to be able to provide that funding for families is vitally important, because many families become homeless because they say, oh, I have to pay $4,000 in moving costs. We're going to live in the car for a week so I can save money so we can move in. But then that week turns into a month, that month turns into 2 months, because it's incredibly expensive and incredibly hard to live homeless. So what we can provide and what we can do is we can step in and pay those upfront moving costs so those families don't have to stay in their car. Additionally, we have coordinator roles in our program that focus on specialized populations. Like Marty mentioned, our Popsicle Place program that serves children with a chronic illness and disability, families that have a child with a chronic illness or disability. And those staff members go into helping providers at Seattle Children's Hospital and Seattle Cancer Care Alliance. And they have a partnership with the Swedish Ballard program that works with women with complex pregnancies. So these are vital to keeping our most vulnerable populations from discharging into homelessness. And their whole goal is to prevent those families discharging into homelessness. And we also just developed a DV coordinator, a domestic violence coordinator, who helps families to kind of safety plan. And if they want to enter a confidential shelter, gives them the options to do that. If they don't want to enter a confidential shelter, she gives them support and skills to stay where they're at safely. So vital role in that, just as Sherry said, there's an increase in families that we see that are experiencing domestic violence. Having someone be able to work with those families early on in this process is really vital for the safety of the family. How this kind of works in this unique role too is mobile outreach specialists are similar to emergency service providers. They go out directly into the community once they get that outreach request, and they meet families where they are, which is a pretty big area. King County, I always say, goes from Snoqualmie to the Bay and Shoreline to Federal Way. That's a massive area. It's urban, rural, suburban, but they've been to every city in King County. And they have this approach that's trauma informed, that builds trust with families, that problem solves with families, safe solutions for them. And we have great results from that. You know, over 70% of our families enter permanent housing. Another 20% will get into transitional housing or residential treatment, or we'll help coordinate them into one of our emergency shelter beds. So the mobile outreach team plays a vital role in making sure that they connect with families and make sure that they are safe. Not only do they help with housing, but they help with things like getting families food, getting families safety items like sleeping bags, jackets, especially when it's deeply cold. They help them get public health information. This was vital during the pandemic, when those families had little access to information. Our team was giving them that information because there was no one else who would outreach to them. So that's why this team is really vital and plays a vital role in the public health and public safety of our communities as well. And then on top of that, we couldn't do this work without partnerships in the community too. With Mary's Place, we want to invest and support those community providers that align with our vision and align with our work. And one of those is Vine Maple Place, which you'll hear about a little later, who does intentional work in Kent and Maple Valley. And we want to support those teams and just as they support us, because we know this crisis will only be solved through joint partnerships and a joint effort and the community coming together. And so that's really important to us as well, and is essential to the success of our program. I'm going to turn it over to Kimmin, because Kimmin can talk about what the day-to-day looks like for mobile outreach and what this work looks like day-to-day.
Yeah, hi. So yeah, I'm Kimmin. I've been with Mary's Place for about 3 years. And you know, every day is different. Every day, you know, I could be in an encampment. I could be meeting with a family at a library. I could be meeting with a family, you know, at the Allen Family Center, just wherever we go, wherever there is a need. And a lot of my work is advocating for families, you know, bridging the gap between, you know, where they are and where they would like to be. And you know, that could be with landlords, it could be helping, you know, partnering with other agencies to help get some eviction debt paid off. It could be, you know, helping them get hooked up with childcare so they can work, just whatever, you know. And, you know, I do this work because I believe housing is a human right. It's not a privilege. I think that homelessness in our society is unnecessary, preventable, and it's possible to eliminate. And I want it to end, and I want to be part of its demise. And you know, I came to this work, though, you know, the passion I have for this work really is rooted in my own lived experience, and I'm able to bring that to my work, you know, every day. I myself became homeless in 2012 following the death of my newborn after a long hospital stay and a stay in the NICU. And, you know, he and well, me and his dad ended up, you know, in a car outside the hospital. So, and I'm telling you this in order to illustrate really that folks become homeless for all kinds of reasons. You know, I work with families that have lost their home in a fire, due to job loss, death of a partner, being just priced out of their homes by rents being raised beyond their means, a lot of domestic violence, illness, disability. I mean, people sometimes have, you know, the folks I work with have complex trauma. They have had one bad thing after another happen to them, just stacked up on, you know, one on top of the other, and they just need a break. And you know, I get to be part of, you know, helping them or helping them help themselves get their lives back together. And, you know, this work is hard and it's absolutely worth it. I love my job. I get to witness families, you know, begin to put their lives back together and begin to help heal their children and themselves and thrive. And they give me a paycheck for doing this, and I'm very grateful for that. Yeah, so this, you know, the role that our team and the wonderful people that I work alongside, we're all just as passionate about this work. And yeah, thank you for listening.
Wow. Thank you, Kevin, or Kimmin. Thank you for being the love we need in this community, for sharing your story. You are an amazing woman, and we are just so proud and grateful that you have chosen to be on the Mary's Place team and in this family. And just loving our neighbors in this community wherever they are. And just thank you for being you. If you have questions for Kimmin or Ryan, please use the Q&A tab because we want to make sure we answer those. We'll be answering those right after we hear from Kyle. Kyle, we're so glad you're here with us today. You are awesome and amazing in the work Vine Maple Place does in South King County, where the need is so great. And really, there has been historically underrepresentation of services in that area. And just thank you for being the leaders with the vision there at Vine Maple Place. And we would love to hear about the work you do, how partnerships like ours stop that cycle of homelessness. So would you mind sharing a little more about Vine Maple Place yourself and all the work you're doing?
I would love to. Thank you, Marty. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to Mary's Place. I'll share more as we talk, but the partnership that Vine Maple Place has been huge in helping families in South King County. And the vision that Mary's Place has had in all of King County has really helped pave the way. So thank you, Marty, and thank you, Mary's Place. So yeah, I'm with Vine Maple Place, and I've been at Vine Maple Place since 2013. And Vine Maple Place opened in the year 2000. And at that point, we were doing transitional housing for families. Fast forward up to 2013, we really saw the need in the community for more. There were so many families that were homeless, near homelessness. And so we were helping about 35 families a year with our transitional housing units, but really started looking at what's next. And so that year in 2013, we started a pilot program where we started working with families that were housed but at risk of becoming homeless, that we called our prevention program. And then also later that year, we started working with more and more homeless families as well. So today, we have 2 locations. Our location in Maple Valley, we've been at since the year 2000, and then our location in Kent that opened this last summer. So we're almost at 1 year in our Kent location. And between both locations, we work with about 350 single parent families at a time. For this upcoming fiscal year, we're expecting to have worked with about 1,300 families. And that's all single parents with kids, dads with kids and moms with kids. And I work specifically on the housing team for families that are homeless, working to get them housed and safe as soon as possible. We have shelter units, and then we work really hard with other organizations to help them get into other shelters. We participate in the shelter intake line, and then also helping families move into their own places as soon as possible. For families that are housed but at risk of being homeless, that's about 50% of our clients at any given time. We're working with helping them find places or helping them find organizations that can help pay off the eviction. And we'll do that as well. Clients will come to us with a 14-day notice, or maybe the court paperwork, or maybe they've just been to court and they have a few days until the sheriff comes and changes the locks. And so we work with them to help them stay where they're housed and prevent that homelessness. And then in the future, maybe help them move to a different place if that's what's better for them long-term. But really, first step is to help them stop the homelessness, or the chance of homelessness. With all of our families, our prevention families and our families that are homeless, they all are able to get our employment services, budgeting, counseling. We have counseling on site at both locations, and also our children's services. Our children's team will help kids get back into school and help with any items or needs that the kids have. And then also just have all kinds of fun, especially in the summer when they go whitewater rafting and mountain, rock climbing, stuff like that. Specifically in South King County, we see in all of King County, but in South King County, quite a bit of barriers for families. One of those barriers is something that Marty's already mentioned too, that there just has not been a lot of services in South King County. And so there is a lot of families that need, and Kent has just been a city of growth. I mean, it has just grown and grown and grown. And as it's grown, it has really become, there's just a lot of need for families, both the families that are homeless and the families that are housed but at risk of becoming homeless. And so, you know, about 50, even before we moved to our Kent location, 50% of our clients we were serving out of our Maple Valley location was Kent clients. And so adding a Kent location really just allowed us to get closer to those families. And so our location now are all around, there's apartment complexes all around, families that are in need all around, homeless families staying in tents all around us. And so it's put us in a prime position to really serve Kent families. And yeah, there is becoming more and more services in Kent, but it still is an underserved area. And other issues with all of South King County too, some of them busing. Busing is a huge issue. Families without cars, it is hard in South King County. There's not the type of transportation we have in Seattle or Tacoma. I mean, it is hard to get around. And then with all of King County, rent has just gone up and up and up. And it just continues to just rise. And so as we work with families, finding places that they can afford is a really big challenge. Yes, our partnership. It's really been years and years now that we have partnered with the outreach team at Mary's Place. We would have families that we are helping with moving costs. We have families we're working with. We've even helped them find a place they can afford or they can get qualified for. And it is really hard to get qualified. If you got to make 2.5 or 3 times the rent, you can't have past evictions. And so there's a lot of reasons why that can be hard. And so families, we've helped them qualify, but then moving cost is still a struggle. And Vine Maple Place has a certain amount of money to help with moving costs per family. But what we see often is these really high moving costs, and it would be first and last. And depending on credit, maybe a really, really high deposit. And so helping families trying to move into a place where it's 3,000, 4,000, maybe even more than that, 5,000 out at one time to get into an apartment complex or a private house that they're renting. And it was even with our help, it just wasn't enough. And so we were having families all the time, and we were doing it all the time, going on the computer, going online and filling out that outreach form. And Mary's Place would quickly get with the client, start working with the client. And we would do a lot of partnership that way. And that was helping families get housed. And so we were so thankful for that. And as we've kind of continued to develop the relationship with Mary's Place, we've really developed that one point of contact with the client, one outreach person or one housing specialist. Instead of more is really a more efficient way to do it. And so Mary's Place and Vine Maple Place have a partnership now where Vine Maple Place is able to get and use some Mary's Place funding, and we fill out the form. We work very closely with the Mary's Place staff, and so we're really able to kind of, in some ways, be an extension of Mary's Place, specifically in South King County, and just working very closely with the team, and it is helping families get housed and housed quicker. And so we are just so thankful for that. And I know we're just all, it's great when the community and organizations can come together to help families get housed. And there's no territorial stuff. It's about these families and how can we help them get housed today, not 3 weeks, not 4 weeks, like Ryan was saying, like they're close, but they're still saving that money. How can we do it today?
We love what you all do, Kyle. We love Vine Maple Place. We know that we are so much better together in this community, and we couldn't do what we do without you. So thank you for being the partner that we need and that we really appreciate in this community. And I know there's so much more good to come of what we can both do together with shared learnings and best practices. So thank you for being you and giving so much back to this community every single day. We are so grateful. If you have questions, please put those in chat or put them in the QA tab for Kyle. We want to make sure he can answer those for you. And I'm going to ask Ryan, can you just share a few final words on the wrap up of our presentation? on ways that people can support these critical needs and efforts?
Yeah, just as Kyle highlighted, it's incredibly important the way we partner with organizations in the community that share our vision and values. And just as like Kyle and Kimmin highlighted too, that low barrier funding is incredibly important in terms of getting families inside quickly to reduce their homelessness experience. And a lot of that at Mary's Place is raised through private philanthropy. And it's incredibly important to get families housed. So we hope to continue to raise funds like that in the future because we know how essential it is and how effective it is. So that is what we'll keep doing, and we'll keep fighting every day for families that are sleeping outside.
You
Can I
bet.
say one more thing?
Please, please.
Awesome. And for us at Vine Maple Place, it's so important the organizations we partner with that we know are really trauma informed and are treating the clients with dignity. And so we know with Mary's Place that is the case. And so we're very thankful for that.
We appreciate that. Yes, trauma-informed care is critical and a priority, and really just how we go about our work. And that is one of the most important pieces of our work together with our neighbors that are really experiencing homelessness. So thank you, Kyle and Ryan, for pointing that out. And thank you to this awesome and amazing panel. Weren't they fantastic? There, you can give them some snaps. I know my heart is full for all of the work that they do every day, and to think that they've been doing this, many of them, for many, many years. So just thank you for your dedication and your persistence and your belief that no child should sleep outside. So let's see what questions have come in from our audience. Katrina, can you read the first question?
Hello, yes, this first question is pertaining to just kind of be curious about what security is in place or offered for families that you're working with, especially families who are experiencing domestic violence.
Ryan, do you want to take that?
That's a good question. So our whole team is trained in safety planning. So if a family is experiencing domestic violence, intimate partner violence, child abuse and neglect issues, our staff is trained on how to have trauma-informed discussions, first of all, around those, and to generally safety plan with a family. One of the first parts of safety planning is trusting the survivor, and that's what a lot of our specialists do when they go out. Is they ask, what will make you feel safe, and how do we get you to safety? Kimmin knows this work well too, of how we talk to clients in that way and have that safety planning discussion. It's one of the first things that we do, and we identify that. We also having that DV coordinator is really essential, and that's why we worked to build out that role, because there wasn't a lot of communication between the providers who provide domestic violence advocacy and confidential shelter and the family homelessness system. And so our DV coordinator in our outreach program is able to bridge that gap. She communicates often within that community, attends meetings within those community providers that provide for DV, IPV. So that's how we serve those clients. It's that initial safety planning and support, asking the client where they feel safe, how do we support them getting there, and then utilizing that DV coordinator to help us bridge gaps. I know, Kimmin, is there anything else you'd like to add about your work in doing that? You're on mute, Kimmin.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, just, just really listening to taking the time to listen to a client's story and hear what they're not saying, and but our DV advocate role is monumental, and she's doing a magnificent job. And then, in our shelters, there are definite safety measures. We have policies and procedures that protect the anonymity of our clients. Yeah, so I don't know. I think you covered it.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Kim and Ryan. Yeah, and our next question, possibly Ryan, if you'd like to cover this, is there a financial cap for services provided to each family?
So we don't have what we call a cap, but it's we have an amount that we aim for as like an average amount. So right now we're looking at like because of the increase of housing costs and how rapid that's increased, that average amount we aim for is 3,500. But we practice equity in this work. So there are some families, if you have a family of 10, which we've had before, we've had several times before, that family's going to need a lot more in moving costs. If you have a family with a single head household who's pregnant, like they're not going to need as much. That many times they move into studios. So our whole thing is like, what's going to cover all of those moving costs and what feels equitable for that family. There are some families that have great employment and like can cover like half of the costs, and they just need help with the other half. So we're not going to need to spend that full 3,500. Whereas there's others that, like what Kim said, that just lost their job or are fleeing DV, they're going to need more of that cost. So that's how we equitably apply it. We try to stay within that range of 3,500 because we only have so much funding. We would love to increase that, and that's where it's like contributions to like making sure that we can provide more DCAs is really important, because we've just seen rent costs skyrocket. And we expect that to continue to happen. But that's what that looks like.
Thanks so much, Ryan. And this next one, I think maybe either Ryan or Kyle, if you'd want to just share your input. What have you seen as any type of training that might be needed around financial skills and budgeting for families that you're serving?
I'll let Kyle answer that because his team has great classes around that.
Yeah, so at Vine Maple Place, we have classes multiple days a week. And typically there's 2 different classes around budgeting that families do at Vine Maple Place. The first is a 4-week class, and it's just an introduction to budgeting. It's introduction to why is a budget helpful, how do you start it, talking about what's your livable wage, looking at your debt and how to pay that off, talking about things like the debt snowball. And then the next 4 weeks after that, they come in with their receipts and really build their budget. So we call that build a budget. And so they're just spending time doing their budget with volunteers, with staff, and yeah, just really working on it together and having people alongside them while they do it, I think is a really beneficial step. Is you're not doing this alone. And what we often see when people come in is the idea of sitting down and starting a budget is just really terrifying. It's kind of like, I've got all these bills on my table and I don't want to open them because I don't know what it's going to eventually tell me. And so just not wanting to start that process. And so really sitting and doing it alongside people is really important to the process at Vine Maple Place. Yeah, I don't know if that exactly answered the question, but it's a very time consuming so there's such great outcomes out of it, though, is really seeing where's money going that maybe it doesn't need to go. And also really helping identify what's your livable wage. We do that by really seeing where the budget is.
Yeah, that's another reason too. I'm glad that question came up. That's another reason too why we've partnered with Vine Maple Place, because it's not something that we offer, but we know they offer it in a really intentional way. I can think of one situation where we had a mom who was living in a broken down car and was really resistant to new people because she'd just been through so much trauma. She was in Maple Valley and we referred her to Vine Maple Place, and she did these classes and it completely transformed her. She was able to like live independently because she gained those skills and she had never developed those skills before. So that's another reason why we really enjoy this partnership, is because Kyle and his team do a great job of those classes.
Yeah, and we've had so many families just tell us that once they really work on that budget and do it, that years later they're working that budget, and it is a life changer for them. They get to really see where the money's going, and often it's the issue has to do with we need more money, but sometimes it's just how can we do this budgeting and what can we take out, and that can be enough sometimes to be able to be livable wage and be able to be self-sufficient long term.
Thank you both so much. Really helpful answers there. Next question for Kyle. Does Vine Maple Place only work with single parent households?
Yeah, traditionally the clients we've served have been single parent families in South King County. That is something we're currently still looking at, and we currently have a few two-parent households, and that's an area that I think will continue to grow in. Traditionally, as we started, we saw those as the most needy families were the single parent families, but that is something we're currently looking at for sure.
Thank you. And next question, I'll pose to the group just to see if whoever wants to kind of step in here. But we're seeing a high increase of mental health crises and just overall services needed, potentially even supportive permanent housing services. Have you been seeing this? And if so, how are you addressing this?
Yeah, I think so. How I like to think of this question. So I have my master's in social work. Like that's my background. For me, like our families, and Kimon brought this up, was all of our families are experiencing complex trauma because of their situation. And when you talk about public health crisis, family homelessness creates a public health crisis, mental health crisis, sorry. It's mental health crisis, it's public health crisis. But yes, I mean, we see that consistently, and it is something that affects our families and affects children in these households. This experience is one that no family should ever have to go through. So that's why we really, really utilize our partners around making sure that families have what they need. That's one of the reasons why Marty has invested in our health services expanding to behavioral mental health. Like Mary's Place understands that it's a crisis and isn't ignoring it, and understanding the impacts of the way homelessness the impacts of homelessness on families and their mental health. So for me, from what I can say from it is that I think we've taken it very seriously, and I think we're continuing to do so. But I like to highlight that homelessness itself creates that. I think there's a misconception that people have a mental health crisis and then they become homeless. That's actually kind of rare. Homelessness most often is what is causing that mental health crisis. And so being as upriver as we can be, starting in the hospitals, preventing discharge of these vulnerable families, finding families very early on in their crisis and getting them housed, that is the best way, in my opinion, to prevent a mental health crisis.
Yeah, one thing I see all the time here at Vine Maple Place is once families are housed and they're able to get into that housing and get some routines going, that can be a huge help with their mental health. And so I think everything Ryan is saying is spot on, is that prevention and helping as many families before homelessness or at the very beginning of that. And the more time that they're potentially on the streets, couch surfing, intent, all of that is just more opportunities for more traumatic events to happen. So we, as much as we can, all of us, I know around this room, we love to get with families before all of that gets started.
Thank you both so much. And so far, we just have one more question within the last few minutes here, which I think actually kind of circles together this last question as well. And I'll start by saying too that I will send resources out after the webinar that can dive more deeply into this. But the question is that this is the first time I've heard the phrase complex trauma, and I'm wondering where we could learn more about trauma-informed care.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it's a little bit of there's a lot of stuff around trauma is like my background is like trauma that impacts families. My background for social work is intergenerational practice, which is basically about families. So I can look up some stuff to send to Katrina. Oops, sorry, car horn. I'll send some stuff to Katrina that she can send on. There's some really great, really accessible videos on YouTube that can break it down. I think it's helpful just for the general public and to know what complex trauma is and how much of a public health crisis trauma in general is, especially coming out of the pandemic. I think all of us can benefit from understanding it. So I'll send that on to Katrina. So that's a cool question. Yeah, so I'll send some materials on.
Thank you so much. And that looks to be the last question that we have so far.
Awesome. I just want to say thank you to our amazing panelists. Your wisdom, your insight, your love, your care, your passion are just infectious, and just really creating a network of a community that loves their neighbors and knows how to respond to their neighbors. So thank you for being you, for joining us here today. We hope you all enjoyed this discussion. Thank you for many of our friends and long-term friends, new friends, partners in the community that joined us today. If you have additional questions, if you would like someone to talk to on our team, please reach out. We want to be responsive to you. We'd love to continue this conversation. And just so there are many ways that you can support Mary's Place and Vine Maple Place in this effort to end family homelessness, because we're going to do it. We're better together in doing that. And we really want to end the cycle of homelessness, as you heard all of our speakers address. And we want to help families find and maintain that stable housing. So as you know, with the end of the eviction moratorium, this is our busiest time of year anyways. As parents are looking to come inside to connect their children to schools, we know a surge of families will need our help in the coming months. And the public resources are just not there to help in this crisis. We need your help to raise the funds to keep these programs growing and scaling across King County and hopefully the state. And we need you to elevate your voice to elected officials, and ask them now to prioritize funding for families who are outside and experiencing homelessness. We must end this crisis, and we must end the cycle of homelessness for our families. So a big special thank you to Kyle today from Vine Maple Place for being here. And we'll send you links and resources of how you can support our partners at Vine Maple Place as well. And last, you will be doing many, many more lunch and learns, right? Where we'll share about other aspects of the work we do together with our partners to address and prevent family homelessness. And we hope to see you at the ones coming in the future. And you will see a survey pop up in your browser right after you exit this lunch and learn. So I hope you'll take a few minutes to let us know what you thought about the discussion and how we can make these sessions really more useful, more impactful for you. And please share ideas of other topics. I think I heard one today on motivational interviewing and trauma-informed care. That would be really helpful. So thank you again. Have a great afternoon. And thank you for being our neighbors who love their neighbors. We appreciate all of you so much. Big love coming at you. Thanks so much. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Bye now.